5C report of a possible entrapment. RP advising they cannot evacuate due to fire. 13526, 13526, Green Forest Lane in the Concow area, across Concow Road. Looking across under the high tension power lines, there's a possible power line hazard.
It's got a single branch that's laying across multiple lines. I'm going to have 2176 go down into the community of Polga and evacuate it. We have quite a bit of country for it to cover until it gets into the Jarbo Gap area. So let's make it mandatory for Polga with them being ready at a moment's notice for the rest of the community.
I can't get through the IC. I'm at 13006 Concow Road with 20 civilians. We're completely surrounded by fire. We're taking a safe zone.
In 2018, a devastating fire ripped through the mountain community of Paradise, California. 85 people died, and almost the entire town burned to the ground. The Camp Fire remains the most destructive and deadliest fire in the state's history, destroying more structures than the Eaton and Palisades fires combined. Nearly 7 years later, Paradise is coming back. It's not the same, and so far, many of the residents have not yet returned. But for those who have, they are determined to rise from the ashes as a fire-resilient community. From LA Times Studios, this is Rebuilding LA. I'm Kate Cagle. At the time of this recording, more than 3,500 homes have been rebuilt in Paradise, with hundreds more in the process every year. Some businesses have come back, schools and community centers too, and the town's leaders are now working on a plan for the downtown area. Not everyone's come back, though. In fact, the population right now is less than half what it was before the fire, and many of those folks are new to Paradise. Rebuilding is hard. Survivors are facing tough choices while they navigate the trauma they just experienced. But many will argue that Paradise is safer. Electrical lines went underground, evacuation routes were reconfigured, and about 200,000 trees were cut down as it became a priority to create a fire-resilient landscape. Now, the last part is not an easy thing to live with when you move to a place for its forests, but it's just one of the many changes the people of Paradise have had to accept. To talk about the town's journey over the last several years is Greg Bolin. He's a longtime resident and a current member of the city council. We also have Colette Curtis, Recovery and Economic Development Director for the town. They're both joining us remotely from Paradise. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I want to take us back 7 years and talk about the night of the fire. But first, I think a lot of people are going to be surprised to hear that so few residents have actually moved back at this point, almost 7 years after the fire. And just on a high level, Greg, let's start with you. What do you think has been the biggest obstacle to folks returning home to Paradise?
There's a lot of choices you need to make after the fire. Very difficult for people to make those decisions. Are my people that I knew going to come back, or is it going to be just me by myself? The community's not going to look the same. Do I want to live in a community that doesn't look the same as it did before? There's emotional issues about going through the fire. PTSD is real. I would have not thought it as real as it is. After going through it, it's a big thing, and people just have it. And so all those things together give you a problem deciding, do I want to come back? Do I want to do it? Those that decide to come back, I like to say it's a pioneer spirit that they have, because you're coming back to something totally different. It looks nothing like it did before. But it's interesting, talking to many of those people that did come back, they can see a future in Paradise that they're excited about, and they're willing to endure these first few years of being tough and being different to get to that future that they see that's going to be out there. And that's exciting. FEMA did tell us, right after the fire, they got us together and they said, you're going to find a third of the people stay, a third of the people don't know what to do, and a third of the people are going to go. their numbers were almost dead on with exactly what happened. It was pretty much a third of them did come back. That middle third is what you're fighting for. Some of those are coming back. Some of those have left and they've gone to other states, other places. Paradise is home, and they're coming back many times.
It's a lot, especially when you have to think that you have to create this kind of interim life for yourself, regardless of what you decide. Colette, what would you say has been the number one obstacle to people coming back?
I think just the logistics of coming back is difficult. Rebuilding a home is difficult. It can be very expensive, and depending on the situation with your resources, with your insurance, with what you have behind you to do that, it can be really difficult. And even when you do make that decision to rebuild, it's time consuming. Because there are a finite number of people who can build the home for you. Materials, you have to wait for those materials to come in. It can be quite a process. We're actually really encouraged by the number that we have seen either return and come back, and then also the new people who have come into our community who are building homes or buying homes that are newly built, who are brand new to the community.
Wow, that's really fascinating. I want to get more into that and really talk about these new folks who are coming into Paradise. But let's start with going back to November of 2018. Greg, you were vice mayor of the town of Paradise at the time. What happened that night? When did you realize that this was a catastrophe on your hands?
Yeah, I was, the morning started like every other morning. I usually took my dog in this field behind our church and ran him in the morning to get him exercised. And there's a school back there. And as I'm standing there running my dog, I'm seeing it go from this distant smoke to now it's this black cloud coming over the top of us. And all of a sudden these large ash fields coming down on top of us. And it was moving quickly and getting more and more intense. So I asked the principal of the school behind the church there, I said, what are you doing? You're taking people in. Why are you not sending them home? We obviously have a problem here. And he said, well, the school district hasn't decided to, stop the school day. And they didn't have information. I mean, this was still a long ways away. We all thought everything was still fine, but it just was looking ominous. So I went to my job sites, got everybody heading home, just said, pick up your stuff, go, just get out of town. It's going to be a crazy day. And went home. My wife was already packing. I already called her. She was getting things going. My mom, I went and got her. She's up the street, got her packed up, got her out. And from that point, a 20-minute drive took us almost 4.5 hours to get down to Chico. Just a lot of traffic, heard a lot of explosions. Propane tanks were exploding. You could tell my mom and my wife both said, why are you wanting to go? You never go. We always stayed. We always stayed and protected our house. But I said, this one's different. We can't stay in this one. So we got out there, and by the time we got onto the main road, it was 12 o'clock in the afternoon, but it was so dark you could not see your hand in front of your face. The place was packed with cars coming down the hill. Everybody was very courteous. That was the one thing that was very interesting, the whole thing, how courteous people were to let you in and to work with you. And we went by and watched our kid's house burning as we went by his place. And the one thing that was interesting, that all of a sudden it was blue sky. It went from dark to absolute blue sky, and like nothing was wrong the minute you came out of it. And that was a good feeling, but you had no place to go. You had no place to sleep. So we had a rally point with our son, and we knew where to meet him. We had some good friends that took us in, and it was very interesting times.
How did you know that this fire was not one that you should stay behind and fight?
I still question that. There was something inside of me that I just knew that this was not the same. I'm listening to the radio broadcast. It's in Polga, it's in Concal, it's heading down the canyon, and there's nothing to stop it. With the winds the way they were blowing, there was nothing that was going to stop this thing. And eventually, fires create their own weather system and their own wind, and this one did.
Colette, I also want to hear your version of events and go back to that day in 2018?
Yeah, thank you for asking. Similar, waking up that day, thinking it was a normal day, hearing about a fire that was 8 miles away. So it really did not immediately set off alarm bells. There have been many fires that have started in that very same area that have either never made it to Paradise, or if they do, it takes days and days and is stopped at the canyon. But Greg said this felt very different. It was very dry. It was late in the season, and the wind was absolutely howling. And very quickly, you could tell in the sky, this looked like a monster coming towards us. That's what it looked like. And I remember telling my kids that morning as I took them to school, and I said, okay, well, I'm going to take you to school now, and then I'm going to go into work. And they were terrified. They said, Mom, how are you going to go into work? And I said, don't worry, it's going to be safe. We're going to be fine. The firefighters are there. They're not going to let anything happen. And of course, that was not the case. And they still to this day, don't let me forget that when there's a fire. Kids are great that way. They never let you forget. So I did go into work. And so at the time of the fire, I was the assistant to the town manager, and my job in an emergency is the public information officer. So my job was to get the word out, to tell people what was happening, where they could get resources, what areas were evacuated. Communication was very, very difficult during this fire. Our communication lines went down very, very early. And so even when we did get the information about evacuation areas, we were not able to push that information out. So that was what I was doing that morning prior to town hall being evacuated. I was actually live on the air doing an interview with our local TV station, talking about the evacuation areas and what people should be doing. And I covered the receiver, and I said, I can't evacuate right now. I'm on the news right now. And so I finished the interview, and then I wasn't thinking. I didn't take anything from my desk at all. I just picked up my purse and walked to the front door. And when I looked outside, I was so confused because it looked like it was night, except there was light coming from an area that was unusual. And I thought, oh, is that the sun? Is that the sunrise? And then I realized it was the house next to town hall that was on fire at that moment. And that was the moment that I went, oh, okay, this is very serious now. And so left town hall, got onto the main road to drive down into Chico, where we had set up a temporary emergency operations center. Through flames, through ash falling and flaming branches falling onto the car next to me, you could see the fire coming up the canyon. It was absolutely terrifying to experience. I think I was in a little bit of a state of shock as this was happening. I remember it, but it felt like a dream happening. And we got out of town and got down to the emergency operations center. And then at that point, the entire town had been evacuated. There was really little else for me to do, but my job was to start calling our staff who had not arrived at the EOC yet to make sure they got out okay. And it was, sorry, I get emotional talking about this part because it was really scary when they didn't answer the phone, because we didn't know if that meant they just didn't have cell service or if they didn't get out. And luckily, every single one of our staff members did make it out. We were so lucky in so many ways, but it was a terrible, scary day that everyone that went through it has a story like that of just how frightening it was. As I'm sure, all of your listeners do. It's such a scary thing to go through.
Well, and then you have survivors, like you said, are navigating this PTSD of what they went through. And then on top of that, having to make all these decisions about what to do next. So almost 7 years after all of this happened, I'll start with you, Greg. How do you feel about the progress that's been made with the rebuild?
We have come a long ways. I am personally very happy with where we're at today. Many people didn't think we'd be where we're at today for 10, 15 years. Yeah, I'd like to say that we did it all ourselves, but that would not be true at all. We had so many partners that came in. Urban Design came in and helped us after the fire. Blue Flamingo came in and helped us after the fire. We had so many that came in and worked with us. We had to get a government back together. We had to get things to where we could people could start at least coming up to even see their property. I mean, it took us quite some time just so that people could come and see their burnt ashes of their house. So we had a focus there, but we also had a town that's going, what's next? And if we're going to capture those people, that third and that other third, if we're going to capture them, we had to put a vision out there for them to see what we see Paradise becoming, what they see Paradise becoming, and what we can implement also. So that's where these consultants came in and helped us out tremendously. The communication went out, and we met in a church up here. We had at times 2,000 people in that church. We were talking about what's to come, where we're at, what's going on, the undergrounding of all the poles. They could start seeing a vision, and they got to actually start putting stickers on posters as to what's most important to them and giving their input. And with that, it engaged them and made them excited about the future of Paradise. It was tremendous to watch. It was incredible to see the people actually engaged and excited about that future. Without that, I think it would have been very, very difficult for Paradise to come back. In fact, I don't know that we could have come back. It would have been, you have to have that vision out there. So that happened, and today we are just cruising. Now, are we where we need to be? No. Are we where we want to be? No. But we're moving forward, and we'll talk about it later. But there is a fatigue that comes into all that's going on to bring the town back.
We'll talk more about how you got to the point where you are now, but can you describe for us what's there now in terms of structures and the layout of the town? What's been built back?
Yeah, so we're a fully functioning community at this point. We did have some commercial buildings that survived the fire. So there were businesses that were able to reopen right away. And there were others that if their building didn't survive, they could move into a building that did survive. And so that kind of started up right away. So not only do we have thousands and thousands of brand new homes, we have businesses that have opened. We have grocery stores. We have gas stations. We still have a lot of the things that we did have, and we're slowly bringing back the things that haven't come back yet. Our schools are phenomenal. Like one of the first things that, FEMA had mentioned to us was, gosh, get those schools back. And that was a huge focus. Of course, the school district takes all the credit for that, and we give them full credit. They have done an incredible job focusing on the kids and their mental well-being after going through something like this. In fact, our school population is outpacing our overall population, which is one of those markers that shows us that our demographic is changing and getting younger. So as people are moving back here, we're seeing more families with kids. In fact, they are right now under construction on rebuilding one of the elementary schools that was lost about 5 years before they had planned to do so. So we are outpacing that recovery already. We have a long way to go still to regain to where we were, but we're a great little community as we are.
We're going to get into the steps that Paradise took to rebuild and what's coming next. But first, let's take a quick break.
Once seeing that the fire was coming, my immediate instinct was to evacuate my parents and my family because it was 4:30 in the morning. So a lot of our neighbors were still asleep. I just started knocking and kicking doors in, and we made it out in the blink of time.
Sergio Lambert, a union carpenter, lost his home in the Altadena fire, escaping with his family just minutes before flames engulfed his whole street. Sergio has promised his mother Dallas that he will rebuild their home with his own hands.
So I recently just graduated valedictorian of my apprenticeship program here at the Carpenter Southwest Local 661. Frankly, the Carpenter Union has truly saved my life and just allowed me to be somebody that my mother can truly be proud of now.
To hear Sergio's story, stay tuned for the end of the episode.
During one of the most severe windstorms Southern California experienced in more than a decade, the Palisades and Eaton fires ignited, leaving heartbreaking losses in our communities. Now, as we build back, we're building stronger, cleaner, and more resilient. In communities most vulnerable to dangerous weather conditions and wildfires, Southern California Edison is placing power lines underground, hardening the electric system by installing wires with protective coating, and adding advanced technology to help keep communities safe. So when Southern California faces the next storm, the next most severe event,
Copy helicopters, structures adjacent here to Piper Road.
we'll be ready. Learn more at sce.com/disaster recovery.
We're back with Colette Curtis, the development director for the town of Paradise, and Greg Bolin, who's on the city council. All right. So in those first few months after the fires, you guys brought in a consultant, which you mentioned earlier in the episode, a group called Urban Design, which had worked with New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina to try to rebuild. How did you guys first come to the conclusion that you were going to need outside help?
I think right away, we all realized that handling this disaster and starting the recovery was bigger than any of us. None of us knew how to do this. And I think that is really, that goes across all disasters. When you have any city that encounters a disaster, the people, the professionals that are there working, they can be the best professionals in the world, but they have no experience in disaster recovery. And so you're learning as you go. And we realized we need help. This is going to be a 20-year plus recovery. And there was no way that we could take all of the priorities that we could see ahead of us and put it into some sort of order. That was, everything seemed like a number one priority. And how can you, that's a great way to get frozen in time, is if everything seems like something you need to be working on right away. And so we needed some guidance. And also, all of us here are also survivors, right? You just heard our stories. So not only did we experience this disaster, and every single one of our staff and council experienced this disaster, but we are also trying to lead the rebuild. That's really difficult to do. And what we loved about the consultant that we worked with, they really had a focus on listening. In fact, they had us all wear buttons that said, "I'm listening," because that's what this process was about. It was about hearing from our community, the people who were going to be living here and hopefully the many decades to come, what their priorities were for recovery. And from that process, with those thousands of people that showed up, told us what they thought, narrowed down the ideas, we came up with 40 recovery projects, really project areas, that has been our blueprint for recovery ever since.
Greg, what are your thoughts?
It's a very tough time because there's a lot of angst going on, and I don't know what's happening in LA, but up here, people lost everything. They lost everything they had, every possession, except for what they got out with. And so people were pretty upset. I lived here most of my life, and people that were friends, they had to take it out on somebody. And many times it was government. So we had to take those arrows and we had to listen to them and let them say, okay, that I understand what you're going through, but what can we do to make Paradise better? What can we do to make Paradise feel safe for you to be able to come back? And that was important for them. They needed to know that if they're going to come back here, that there was some things done that made it safer than it was before. So all those things were accomplished, and it's really been a great thing for us to move forward with.
Well, it's fair to say that there is a lot of anger down here directed at the government and the failures that happen, the empty reservoir, the lack of water pressure, the mistakes with the alert system, and people who never got an alert that there was a fire that was coming. I'm curious, was it difficult to get buy-in to bring an outside group? Did you get resistance there? And then also, how do you approach getting buy-in with some of the changes that Paradise had to make, like cutting down hundreds of thousands of trees?
Everybody's walking on pins and needles at first. It didn't matter what we did. You were very cautious every move we made and everything we did. But I'll tell you, Urban Design, and I hate to, I'm not trying to do a commercial for them, but they came in so humble and so gracious. And you mentioned the trees. I remember the first time I stepped foot in Paradise in 1967. I was 9 years old, and I stepped out and I could smell the pine trees. As time goes on, people have found that the trees block some incredible views that we have in this town. And that's what people that are new coming into town, they go, I ask them, we lost our trees. We lost what we think is our beauty. Why are you coming here from, we're talking to people from back east, from Idaho, from Oregon, from all different places. What brings you to Paradise? And he says, you lost your beauty? Have you seen the views in this place? The canyon views, the sunsets? They said, we've never seen anything like this in our life. This is where we want to spend the rest of our life. That's good for us to hear because things have got to be different. And people are realizing that. They understand it. They're accepting it. And we're moving forward.
What about you, Colette? How do you think about this buy-in question?
Yeah, I think, again, it was for the consultant portion, really how the consultants approached both, us here on staff and our council and the community in saying, we're really just here to support you. They didn't show up with a set list of priorities or, well, this is what we think you should do. They really listened to us and took the lead there. So I think that is really important in getting that buy-in and getting people to give their input. Because again, once they see the thing that they said put into a plan and construct something, they buy into that and they say, wow, I was part of that process. It takes a long time. There were certainly people in the very beginning that did not like that this was happening. And it's sort of a long-term communication relationship with the community and saying, this is what we're saying we're going to do, and we're going to do it. Now, over time, we've updated the plan. We've, gotten more input. Things have changed a little bit, because that's something else about recovery is as you get further away and new people come in, priorities can change. So we're working with that. We're learning from that. We're actually doing a big update to that plan in the next few months to get some new input from our new residents and see where we're going into the future.
Colette, I understand you're talking to urban design about plans for the downtown. What can we expect with that? And what other big projects are you still working on at this point?
Yeah, so we're really focused on bringing our downtown back. It really has lagged behind in recovery for a lot of reasons. We actually had the good fortune of having received a grant before the fire to do some infrastructure improvements in our downtown area, doing some sidewalks, new sidewalks, pathways, lighting, landscaping. And we completed that. We had to wait for after the fire and for the debris to be cleared, but we did do that project. So our infrastructure is there. We have a beautifully infrastructured downtown area with a lot of vacant lots because they're hard to develop. So we're working with Urban Design Associates to get past some of those hurdles and figure out how we can do that. So we're really excited about that. This plan is going to go over those options, some incentives, ways we can talk with property owners to do these things, and what the town can do to institute some activations to do that. We're going to have that plan by the end of this year.
We did reach out to Barry Long, by the way, at Urban Design, and he told us that the biggest challenge at the outset was rebuilding the infrastructure, the electrical, septic system, etc. He also mentioned that the debris cleanup had messed up some of the streets. But overall, he said, and I'll quote him, he said, the people of Paradise told us not to redesign their town, just to make it a better version of what it was pre-fire. Do you feel like that's what you got?
I agree with that. Yeah, I agree with that. And I think that's what people wanted. It's a small town, and it's something that people wanted to keep that quaintness, and people that are coming here want to experience that.
What do you think, Colette? Are you getting a better version of what was there before?
Yeah, I think so. A big focus that we have is on resiliency. I'm sure this question comes up a lot for your listeners. We're asked a lot, why would you rebuild in a place that had a big fire? Does that make sense? Why would anyone do that? A big answer to that question is because it's home, right? These are people's homes and they want to come back to their community. But I think there's a little bit something existential behind that too, that, we find not only do we want to come back to our community, but there's disasters everywhere. There really are no places, whether in this country or in this world, that are completely safe from disasters, whether man-made or natural. And so we would rather spend our time figuring out how to live here in a resilient way than running away from disaster to disaster to disaster. We're just going to stay here. We're going to figure out how to make our homes as hardened as we can, how to make sure we have defensible space. There's some really great science behind it in what you can do to make an area more fire resilient. And so we are very focused on that and making the community better in that way so that we can be here for a really long time.
So those things are very important. We built probably a handful of homes before the fire that were to the new WUI code. They call it WUI, Wildland and Urban Interface Code. In other words, you're bringing houses into the wildlands, and it does everything from the way you vent your house to the way your windows are. Your windows are probably your most vulnerable spot. So they've changed the glass on the outside pane. All these different things that we have to do now that keeps embers from getting into the attic, keep fire from getting into the house. Concrete siding on the outside or stucco, some type of resilient exterior skin that keeps that from burning. And then you keep bark away for 5 feet, no bark, no plants, no nothing for 5 feet around that house. And it works. I mean, it works. Even in these big fires, it works. We had about a handful of houses that were that way throughout town, and every one of those houses did not burn in the fire.
And folks can get insurance, right?
That helps. Yes, that will help. We've had problem up here, but now Mercury's come in, and I guess there's 4 or 5 others that are talking about coming in now. I just heard on the radio that are now moving into this area and going to take people off the California Fair Plan. California Fair Plan is, thank goodness it's there if you need it, but it's not the plan you want to stay on.
We talked about this a little bit already, but I want to delve into this a little bit more because it sounds very controversial. Greg, you had to get rid of a ton of trees. What led Paradise to make the decision that had to be done? And how difficult was it to get the buy-in to actually do it?
Well, first off, most of the trees were burnt and they were gone. They were just standing sticks that were burnt. So the majority of those trees were already gone. Now, since then, we have trees that look, if you stand back and look at them, and most arborists would say, yeah, that pine tree is fine. Don't do anything with it. The problem is, because there's so many trees gone, that there's nothing to stop the winds from hitting it as hard as they do now. There used to be that barrier of many, many trees that would help out. The trees are slowly going. Even the healthy trees are falling in the wintertime. We've learned so much about what trees do and how they interlock their roots, and everything works together. So the trees are coming down. This last year, we fixed 3 homes that trees went into these homes. It's not worth it. I don't want to sit there at night when there's a wind going, a wind event, and thinking about my trees, whether they're going to fall or not. So a lot of it has been also people just saying, I've had enough and I want these trees out. And I talked to a lot of the old timers up here. They didn't get knocked off their feet with this fire. And I go to them, they were born in the 30s, some in the 20s, they're here still. And I say, how come this isn't exciting or devastating for you? How come you're not blown away by this fire? And every one of them independently looked at me and said, this is exactly the way it was back when I was born. There weren't this many trees. There was a lot of orchards up here. And now it's just taking us back to our childhood. And many of them said, we had too many trees. We should have been thinning out our tree situation before, but everybody loved their trees. They moved their houses to be built around trees, their decks around trees. And so trees were a big thing, but they just can't be anymore in our situation.
Colette, anything else you want to highlight? Any other steps that Paradise is taking to be more fire resilient?
Yeah, and I think Greg does such a great job describing this because not only is he a fantastic town council member, he also is a very respected builder in this community. And so he is extremely knowledgeable about all of these things. But, for the town of Paradise, it's really important for us that we're following the highest standards when it comes to building code, because as Greg was just saying, it works, right? It makes sense. So in this community, you have to follow the California State Building Code. We also are subject to the WUI Building Code, which pretty much every foothill community in the state of California is required to follow that code as well since 2008. In addition to that, we have local building codes that we instituted 2 years ago. Then we look at the community level with defensible space. We inspect every property in town every year. And if that property is found to be out of compliance, where their weeds are high or they have dead trees or any other of those issues, we let them know and say, you need to address this. We're going to come back and look at it. And then we go into a process where we inspect it to make sure they comply. And if they don't, we abate the property to make sure it's not creating a fire risk for their neighbors. We also encourage FireWise communities, which is a designation you can get through CAL FIRE in the state of California, where you get together with your neighbors and do some work in the neighborhood to make it more fire resilient. We also are working with our Parks and Rec district on a buffer project because we live in a wildfire urban interface area where we have forest all around us. So oftentimes, a fire starts in the forest and comes into town. And so we're looking at working with them to acquire property or easements to provide, fire breaks to slow fires as they come into town. And then if fires do come into town, we installed a siren system in our community as well, where we have 21 sirens that we use in case there is an evacuation. That's what they're for. So those happened after the fire. We didn't have a siren system on the day of the fire, so it was more difficult to communicate. And we realized we needed a redundant system because sometimes technology fails. But sirens, they're highly technical, but at their base, they're kind of a very old school system where you can push that button and turn on the siren if you need to. And so we have those available now as well. That was through a FEMA grant. So we've done as much as we can. We're always looking for more.
Let's talk a little bit more about insurance. Greg, you were able to bring back Mercury insurance. I'm sure that is huge for this community. Just how big of a win was that?
It was very big. There's several situations that I know of. People were going to buy homes and they were in escrow, and then they found out their insurance costs and they backed out because between the mortgage and that they could not make it work. There's people that are deciding to go without insurance, which I cringe at that. I don't think that's a good idea, but they're willing to roll the dice on that. So having Mercury come in and look at it, see, the whole thing is, what we've been asking is come in and see what we're doing. Come in and look at us. Don't just look at us on a map and say, well, you guys burnt. You're a bad risk. Come see what we've actually accomplished. The president of Mercury actually came and did that. He came and drove through town. And he goes, oh my goodness. He goes, not only are you guys concerned about wildfire problems, you're actually implementing the things that people are talking about. He says, this is worth us doing insurance here. But if these other companies come in and start writing, you're going to see a new surge in building up here that's going to be very good for Paradise.
But this is happening because the community made fire resilient changes.
Yes, absolutely it is. The insurance companies, the insurance commissioner have been very clear with us that what is moving the needle is the mitigation efforts. It's reducing risk. So all of those things that we talked about, the increased building codes, the fire resilience, the defensible space, the neighborhoods coming together, all of that is, of course, for safety first and foremost, but it also reduces overall risk for your property. And so that's what insurance companies want to see.
And it's not just talking about it. It's actually doing it. It's doing the work that needs to be done.
We're going to get more into it on the other side of this break. Stay with us.
Hi, my name's Jordan, and I'm a producer at LA Times Studios. I'm here to talk to you a little bit about our new sponsor, Ollie. Like many dog owners, my dog Zooms has become like a child to me. And with that type of responsibility comes the constant need to keep them happy and healthy. One way I make her mealtime a little bit better is through Ollie. Ollie delivers clean, fresh nutrition in 5 drool-worthy flavors, even for the pickiest eaters. Made in U.S. kitchens with the highest quality, human-grade ingredients, Ollie's food contains no fillers, no preservatives, just real food. And here's the thing. Healthier food means a happier pup. More energy, shinier coats, better poops, and more excitement at mealtime. Fill out Ollie's 30-second quiz, and they'll create a customized meal plan based on your pup's weight, activity level, and other health info. For any first-timers, Ollie will send out your pup's first box with 2 weeks' worth of meals, a free storage container for mess-free serving, and a guide of how to gradually switch them over to their new diet. Dogs deserve the best, and that means fresh, healthy food. Head to ollie.com/rebuildingla, tell them all about your dog, and use code RebuildingLA to get 60% off your welcome kit. Plus, they offer a happiness guarantee on the first box, so if you're not completely satisfied, you'll get your money back. That's OLLIE.com/rebuildingLA and enter code RebuildingLA to get 60% off your first box.
We're back with Rebuilding LA. It sounds like you are really moving forward to make this a safe community. Greg, at the beginning of the episode, though, you talked about fatigue, decision fatigue. How are folks getting through this long rebuild process? And I'm curious, too, what changes you've seen from folks who, right after the fire, what they thought they were going to do and what has changed their mind over time, one way or the other.
Fatigue is a very real thing. And we're undergrounding our whole town, our power lines, our communication. We're repaving all our roads. A lot of the roads were damaged because cars burnt on the roads. So all of our roads are getting re-asphalted. Plus the cleanup, the tree removal, the rebuilding of homes, all those things. There's a constant, stop and go. You used to be able to get across town within about 15 minutes, at the most. Well, now you got to plan about 20, 25, 30 minutes sometimes, depending on the situation of the roads, which everybody's excited about. No one's complaining about it, but there is this inside fatigue that people, they're just going, man, when are we going to get past this? It's been 7 years. We're ready to move on. That does happen. And it would have been easy to just say, no, I'm done and leave. I have family in Ohio and Tennessee, and I have family in Sacramento. I could have gone with my kids anywhere. We chose to stay here because Paradise is going to come back and be something special. And I don't want to miss that. How many times you get an opportunity to bring a town back from a disaster and see it into fruition of becoming what its potential is? And I wanted to be a part of that. And that's exciting. And people have come back and I said, why did you leave and why did you come back? And they said, we didn't think Paradise had a future. And we come back and we see that there is a future now. We can see it. That part to me is more exciting than anything else, I think, because that means we're doing something to where they can see that this is a place that they want to be.
Greg, I don't know what it is, but the way you talk about folks moving to Paradise makes me emotional. And I don't know if it's because the name of your town sells itself or just because you sound like really optimistic about the future of Paradise, despite everything that has happened.
We are optimistic, and I am. I just, again, this is a little town. I'm just looking out here, out the window right now, and the football field right here at the high school. Friday nights, big thing for our town to get together on Friday nights and have a football game. There's always Gold Nugget Days, a parade, and all this stuff that goes on with that. We have Johnny Appleseed. We have all these things, and people come from all over to be a part of this. It's a special place. Like I said, I've worked all over California, all up and down the state, and people ask why I stay here, and I said, this is home. This is just, it's where I feel best. And a lot of people, I had one couple said that they left Paradise to go find a place to live because they thought Paradise is done. They got to the border of Nevada and she looked at him and he looked at her and they said, there's no place going to feel like home except our lot. They drove back and stood on their lot and they said, this is home. And they built their house. So that's happened over and over and over again. I've heard that story.
What about you, Colette? How do you think back on the last 7 years and where Paradise still has to go from here?
Well, we certainly have a long way to go, but I'm with Greg. I'm a very positive person. And even the day after the fire, when we looked around and thought, oh my gosh, this is unbelievable. It was unreal to look at. there was never a moment that I thought Paradise would not come back and rebuild. And so it never crossed my mind not to be a part of that. But, the fatigue is definitely real. We see that from the community, and it's our job sometimes to keep that positivity, but it's a lot of work. It's harder than I ever imagined it would be. And I knew it would be hard. It is so difficult in so many unexpected ways, some expected, but many unexpected ways, but so worth it. It's so worth it because the milestones that we've reached and just the way the community is coming back is so incredibly rewarding to see that it makes up for all of those things. All the time I'm asked, well, what were the obstacles? And then what are the successes? And they're actually the same things. The things that start off as the obstacles and you think, I'm never going to get past this. We're never going to get over debris removal. We're never going to get through tree removal. We're never, and suddenly we work through it and suddenly we're on the other side and it's a success. And we've done something that no one has ever done before. That's a word that's thrown around a lot, is unprecedented. And, I think wildfires are becoming so much more common, but they're still not really what some of our systems are designed for. And so often you find that, the people you're working with just don't know how to handle these. The programs that are available, they don't know how to handle it. So you're working with people to figure out, how do we change this program? Or how do we make this better? If not for us, for someone else. And that's one of my favorite parts of my job, is obviously helping my community. But if I can't, because we're getting to that point where sometimes the work we do, it's just not available for us anymore. But sometimes it can be available for someone else. If it's available for Lahaina or for LA, if we've been able to, talk FEMA into changing some of their guidelines so that it fits a wildfire a little better and it's a little bit easier for Altadena to apply for something, that is a huge success in my book, and that will keep us going. We want to be that resource for other communities to help, because it just keeps happening.
Well, Greg and Colette, thank you so much for your time. I did not expect to feel so uplifted after talking to both of you, but you've definitely made us all feel like folks who do want to come back, that there's a path forward for them, and that it's going to be long and hard, but not impossible. So thank you so much for that.
Our prayers are with you guys, and our heart goes out. I'm glad we're not where they are right now, but there's a bright future for them, and if they just buckle down, they're going to do great. I know they will.
Well, we have Greg Bolin, City Council member in Paradise, the former mayor, and also Colette Curtis, the Recovery and Development Director for Paradise. Thank you so much for your time and your expertise today.
Thank you. Appreciate your time.
It's a pleasure.
That's it for Rebuilding LA. Thank you for listening. You can check us out on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. Please subscribe and leave us a review. We'll be back next week. We'll see you then. Now, a word from our sponsor.
The following is a paid message from Rebuild SoCal Partnership. Sponsor has no editorial oversight.
Sergio Lambert had to evacuate his mother and father from their Altadena home within 10 minutes. They escaped with only the clothes they were wearing. As a leader in the Los Angeles Carpenters Union, Sergio went to work helping other members, as well as other families in Altadena, who had lost their homes. Rebuild SoCal Partnership recently talked to Sergio and his mother Dulles about their loss and about Sergio's determination to rebuild their home with his own hands.
Once seeing that the fire was coming, my immediate instinct was to evacuate my parents and my family, because it was 4:30 in the morning, so a lot of our neighbors were still asleep. I just started knocking and kicking doors in, and we made it out in the blink of time. Yes, it was a state of fear, but more so it was a state of, what's my next best move for me and my family's sake? And unfortunately, the next time that I saw my house, it was strictly ashes.
I did a dual celebration because we celebrated Christmas and Kwanzaa. We baked rum cake, and that was a tradition in our family stemming from Costa Rica and Jamaica.
A family favorite.
I've tried not to come up here too often because it's very difficult. It is. And I need closure. I think that helps me to just see that it's no longer here. But the good memories are there. That's what keeps us afloat.
And though it's hard to be up here and we lost everything, We have some neighbors that live right around the corner that lost their lives.
We have lived there for over 35 years. It's a very diverse neighborhood, lots of African-American families. And we got to know people from walking. We were walkers around here. This neighborhood was, we were walking our dogs, we were walking the children, so very close-knit. My understanding is that a lot of our neighbors did not have fire insurance, and our hearts go out to them.
When I lost my house, the Carpenters Union was right there immediately helping us out with water, food, shelter, and personally, they helped me out with the $5,000 donation to get me and my family back on my feet.
Josh Raper, Regional Manager of the Western States Council of Carpenters, which represents thousands of union carpenters in Southern California, saw immediately what was needed.
We are a union that fights for all of our members, as well as the community. What really makes us proud is that Carpenter Union locals from around the country pool their resources to support these union brothers and sisters in need.
So in my younger years, I found myself being incarcerated. Upon release, I found the Carpenters Union due to family and friends. The skills and knowledge and education I got from the Carpenters Union changed my life. So I recently just graduated valedictorian of my apprenticeship program here at the Carpenters Southwest Local 661. What I brought to the apprenticeship was a great attitude, punctuality, but most of all, my resilience. Frankly, the Carpenter Union has truly saved my life and just allowed me to be somebody that my mother can truly be proud of now. And right to the right of me, this is where I built my 1,400 square foot ADU. The beauty of it is I built it once, we can always build it again. But yeah, I would say the greatest memories that I had in the home as a carpenter was all the updates that I did to this home that I grew up in, and along with the ADU that I built in the backyard. The tile for the bathroom was an all-black mosaic tile, and I used a special saw to make all those intricate cuts. But now, unfortunately, due to the fire, the saw has been destroyed. It's hard to take it all in.
Sergio's an individual that had a couple bumps in the road, but he was really able to turn his life around. The Carpenters Union and our mentorship programs were proud to be part of that transformation.
Right here, remember, Sergio, the bedroom was right here, and the living room was right over there where you see the fireplace. And we're gonna try to recreate all of this, wherever our new home may be or when we get back here.
These are the hands of a skilled carpenter, working man's hands. I'm devoted, and I've made the promise to my parents that as a skilled carpenter, that I will build this house back, even if it's with my own hands.
Rebuilding LA is hosted and reported on by me, Kate Cagle. Our senior producer and showrunner is Megan Larson. Our associate producers are Jordan Patterson and Megan Botel. Our camera operators are Michael Siegel, Carter Wells, and Peter Grayson. Our director of post-production is Patrick Stewart, and our senior sound recording engineer is Nick Norton, with audio engineering help from David Iskadarian and motion graphics by Dougal Henkin. Our video editors are Daniel Flesher, Michael Ray, and Peter Grayson. Ben Church is our senior coordinating producer. Our podcast marketing manager is Bryn Jura, and our product marketing director is Becca Dorman. Our general counsel at the Los Angeles Times is Jeff Glasser. Special thanks to President and Chief Operating Officer of the Los Angeles Times, Chris Argentieri, and the Executive Editor of the Los Angeles Times, Terry Tang. And one final thank you to all the residents of Altadena, Malibu, and the Pacific Palisades for sharing your stories with us. Rebuilding LA is co-created by LA Times Studios President Anna Magzanian and executive produced and co-created by Darius Derrickson.